The failed ambition of one man in southern China led him to believe something so outrageous, so outlandish, that it killed over 20 million people. What started as seeing visions and hearing voices rippled through China, burned cities to the ground, and wiped out 5 to 10% of China's population. But before the slaughter, before the Qing Empire cracked, there was just Hong Xiuquan, and the voices he swore came from heaven. What did they whisper, and why did the world bleed for it?
In the early 1800s, China was under the rule of the Qing Dynasty, but the empire was struggling. The population had grown so fast that there wasn't enough land or food for everyone. Famines swept through villages, and the opium trade had created addiction and misery. Corruption ran deep in government offices, and ordinary people felt abandoned. In the middle of this, a man named Hong Xiuquan was born in 1814 to a poor Hakka family in southern China. Like many ambitious young boys of his time, Hong dreamed of passing the imperial exams to become a government official. But life had other plans for him. He failed the exams not once, not twice, but 4 times. For someone who had pinned all his hopes on that dream, the repeated failure broke him. In 1837, after he failed the imperial exam for the 3rd time, Hong suffered a nervous breakdown and became seriously ill. But while recovering, he started having vivid dreams and visions of heaven. In these visions, he saw a golden-haired man who handed him a sword. He also learned he had a divine family separate from his earthly one. Weird, right? There is more. His heavenly father, who was an older man, told him that people were worshiping demons and that he needed to drive those demons out of China. Also, this older man instructed Hong to change his name to Hong Xiuquan. Later, Hong added that he saw Confucius being punished in heaven for misleading the people. But it seemed nobody was paying attention to him, so he went back to preparing to write the imperial exam again. In 1843, he failed the imperial exams for the 4th and final time. It was at this time that Hong finally sat down to read the Christian pamphlets he'd been given years earlier. Suddenly, his visions made sense to him. He decided his heavenly father was God. The man with the golden hair in his visions was Jesus. And since these men were his divine family, that automatically makes him Jesus's younger brother. This belief didn't just stay in his mind. Hong began to preach. He told people that China's problems came from demons. Demons that took the form of corrupt officials and the Manchu rulers of the Qing Dynasty. He promised a new world where land would be shared, men and women would be equal, and God's laws would replace the failing rule of the Qing. At first, it was just a religious group. Hong and his followers called themselves the God Worshippers Society, gathering poor peasants and Hakka communities in southern China. But the Qing government grew suspicious and cracked down on them. By 1851, things turned violent between the religious group and the Qing government. Hong's followers, now an army, launched an uprising that was known as the Jintian Uprising. That same year, Hong declared himself the Heavenly King, leader of a new state called the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Within 2 years, the movement exploded. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. By 1853, the Taiping army swept through cities along the Yangtze River and captured Nanjing, one of China's most important cities. They then renamed it Tianjing, meaning Heavenly Capital. Once inside, they carried out a brutal massacre. On who? There was a tribe called Manchu. These people were the ruling ethnic group of the Qing Dynasty. They had built a strong community in Nanjing. Hong saw the Manchu population as demons, so he killed all Manchu men. The Manchu women were forced out of the city, locked inside buildings, and burned alive. Inside their new capital, Hong and his leaders created strict rules. Opium, alcohol, gambling, and prostitution were banned. Men and women were strictly separated, even married couples. Land was supposed to be shared equally. Foot-binding, a Chinese custom where young girls' feet were tightly wrapped with cloth to stop them from growing normally, was forbidden. On paper, it looked like an attempt at fairness and reform. But inside the Taiping leadership, things began to unravel. Hong Xiuquan stepped back from day-to-day governing and ruled through written orders, living in comfort with many women in his inner chamber, while his followers were strictly separated. He frequently issued strict religious rules, but it wasn't long before he clashed with his powerful deputy, Yang Shuqing. Yang didn't only constantly challenge Hong's policies, he also claimed to speak as God. This meant that he had higher authority than Hong, who claimed to be Jesus' brother. By 1856, Hong grew suspicious of Yang's growing power and spy network, so he ordered his rivals to eliminate Yang. This led to what was called the Tianjing Incident, where Yang and thousands of his followers were killed. It was a gruesome internal purge. This split weakened the movement just as the Qing Dynasty was regaining its strength. A skilled Qing official, Zheng Guofan, built a powerful regional army, the Xiong Army. This army had Western support from a small but well-trained force called the Ever-Victorious Army. This army helped defend key cities like Shanghai. By 1860, the Taiping tried and failed to take Shanghai. They fought hard, but the Qing army was not giving up. In 1861, the Qing army captured the key city of Anqing after a long siege that caused starvation and desperation inside the walls of the Heavenly Kingdom. Then they set their sights on Nanjing. In 1862, the Qing army besieged Nanjing. Inside, Hong's heavenly kingdom was falling apart. Even though the Taiping had more soldiers, they couldn't break the siege. Hong Xiuquan insisted that God would protect the city, but as the siege dragged on, food ran out. Hong ate wild vegetables to survive, got food poisoning, and after a 20-day illness, he died in June 1864. Hong's 15-year-old son, born by his most senior wife Lai Xinying, briefly took over leadership. He was regarded as junior lord, but Nanjing fell weeks later. Qing forces stormed Nanjing. The city fell, and a massacre followed. Up to 300,000 civilians were killed. Hong's body was dug up, burned, and his ashes fired from a cannon. The remaining Taiping forces were hunted down, and by January 1866, the rebellion was completely crushed. The Taiping dream ended in fire and blood. The rebellion had lasted almost 14 years. It left an unimaginable toll. At least 20 to 30 million people died from battles, starvation, and disease. Nearly 5 to 10% of China's population was wiped out. The Taiping Rebellion weakened the Qing Dynasty forever. It showed how fragile the empire had become and forced changes, including attempts at modernizing the army and government. But for most people, it was remembered not as a dream of heaven on earth, but as one of the deadliest tragedies in human history, all sparked by a man who claimed to be China Jesus.